Welcome everyone to this very special episode of Maple Syrup for Your Eyes as I have a look at the films of the Cronenberg family. I'm Richard Krause. Before we jump in, I'll state up front there are two terms you will not hear in the body of this podcast. Here's an interview clip with David Cronenberg to explain why. I just came across a term that I had never heard before, maybe you have, that your fans are called Cronenheads.
I have never heard that.
I have never heard that either until
like
Twitter today.
That you have to pop, I don't know if I like that. But listen, I didn't invent body horror either. That's not my phrase. I never used that term, and I actually don't think it's quite accurate. But of course, it sticks because it's kind of, it's snappy and stuff. But so Cronenheads, no, that's a new one.
So those are the rules. No Cronenheads and no body horror. Let's get started.
Long live the new flesh.
My look at Cronenberg family values, of course, begins with David Cronenberg, a director who frequently visits what Victor Hugo called the night within us, provoking the Village Voice to call him the most audacious and challenging narrative director in the English-speaking world. The Toronto-based filmmaker made an indelible impression on me with the movie Videodrome. I had only lived in Toronto for a few years when Videodrome was released in 1983. Compared to my tiny hometown of Liverpool, Nova Scotia, the city was a wonderland, wide open and filled with possibilities. City TV was the coolest station in the world, with baby blue movies on late at night, music videos in prime time, and the late, great Mark Daly's booming voice as the glue that held it all together. I wanted to work there, to be part of something new and something different, something that was steering Toronto the Good into uncharted waters. Then I saw David Cronenberg's film, and I read about how it was very loosely based on City TV head honcho Moses Neimner. Somehow, this bit of information enhanced the movie for me, as though every time I turned on the television, I was engaging in an act of rebellion. For sure, the late great movies on City TV were never going to feature a snuff film like Civic TV did in the movie, and nor did I want them to, but as a pop culture sponge, there was something intoxicating to me about the connection between what I was seeing on the big screen and its relationship, no matter how tenuous, to my real life. Videodrome spoke to me in a way other films that more closely echoed my experience didn't. Going Down the Road should have appealed to my maritime roots, but I didn't come to Toronto for lawyering and doctoring jobs. I came for adventure and to be adventurous, and that was exactly what the story of a sleazy UHF television station programmer who becomes spellbound by the hallucinatory power of movies provided for me.
Max Wren is a victim.
I woke up with a headache.
He has been exposed to Videodrome.
I've been hallucinating for a while, ever since...
What?
Since I first saw Videodrome.
His brain is already receiving video images. I think that massive doses of Videodrome signal will ultimately produce and control hallucination to the point that it will change human reality. Television can change your mind. Videodrome will change your body.
Long live the new flesh.
According to IMDb, David Cronenberg is known as the Baron of Blood. But, like the two other forbidden names we've already talked about, I think Baron of Blood is perhaps a regal-sounding but ultimately reductive nickname. Sure, there are squirmy, boundary-pushing, blood-splattered moments in nearly all his films, but they are all about so much more than fake plasma. When he makes a genre film, he embraces the genre while at the same time broadening the boundaries of what we expect from that genre. Frequent themes are the intersection of sex, technology, and transformation and violence, and those are integrated into his films in a way that makes them as intellectually stimulating as they are viscerally affecting. His remake of the 1958 horror film The Fly, for instance, in which a scientist has a horrific accident when he tries to use his newly invented teleportation device, takes the bare bones of the original movie and infuses it with themes of physical and psychological decay, transformation and tragedy, and a complex cautionary tale of messing around with nature.
Have you ever heard of insect politics? Neither have I. Insects don't have politics. They're very brutal. No compassion. No compromise. We can't trust the insect. I'd like to become the first insect politician. I'm saying I'm an insect who dreamt he was a man and loved it. But now the dream is over and the insect is awake. I'm saying I'll hurt you if you stay.
On Rotten Tomatoes, the critical consensus for The Fly reads, David Cronenberg combines his trademark affinity for gore and horror with strongly developed characters, making The Fly a surprisingly affecting tragedy. The Brood is probably Cronenberg's most traditional horror film, the story of a man who tries to uncover an unconventional psychologist's therapy techniques on his institutionalized wife amidst a series of brutal murders, features murderous psychoplasmatic kids, experimental psychotherapist Oliver Reed, and Samantha Eggar as a fetus-licking mother. It is the very stuff that nightmares are made of. It's lesser seen than The Fly or Dead Zone, and way more down and dirty, and for sheer scares, it's hard to beat. But amidst the horror, Cronenberg slathers on themes of family dysfunction, alienation, and psychological repression, which, as Rotten Tomatoes says, deepens the story of the exploration of the bizarre and deadly side of motherhood.
They come from the unknown, and they're here now, hiding, waiting to strike. You can feel their presence all around you. Never before have you come this close to the edge of terror. Never before have you faced anything so strange and sinister, so bizarre and unnerving. Never until now. David Cronenberg's The Brood.
I've told you about two of David Cronenberg's horror films, but his filmography is not limited by genre. In Cosmopolis, he takes us on an existential road trip through the breakdown of modern society. Spider's trip into the mind of a severely mentally ill man is an unnerving cerebral thriller, while A History of Violence's story of a mild-mannered man who becomes a local hero through an act of violence is a tense psychological crime thriller.
They were gonna kill us. You saved our lives.
Hello, my hero.
Tom Stahl is a family man with long-standing ties to this community. Right now, this community is rallying behind him and calling him a hero.
Way to go, Tommy.
Great, more reporters.
You look like reporters. You're the big hero.
Really don't like to talk about it, sir.
You sure took care of those two bad men, Joey.
My name is Tom. It's Joey.
You tell me.
And while David Cronenberg has never made a film that could be filed under the comedy category, his films are much funnier than you might imagine given their subject matter. Crimes of the Future, for instance, is an olio of ideas with a great deal of humor. The neo-noir setting plays host to an unconventional love story, a parable of climate change, evolution, and the search to feel something real. The result is a subversive movie that, as the character Caprice says, is juicy with meaning and is also filled with a special brand of humor. I asked David Cronenberg about his use of humor at the time of the film's release in 2022. Was that important for you to balance the bleakness of some of the ideas in this story with some lightness just as a counterbalance?
Well, that suggests that I'm a very sensible, rational craftsman. In fact, I just write stuff, and obviously, for me, I mean, without humor, you don't survive. So for me, it's it's just a no-brainer to have humor in my movies. I mean, I often say that all of my movies are comedies. Well, of course, I don't really mean it literally, but what I really mean is they all have serious humor in them. And part of it is just because even in the most dire circumstances, there is humor, and one needs it to survive. So it came naturally. I wasn't really trying to find a balance. Obviously, you can subvert your movie with humor that comes in the wrong place at the wrong time, the wrong kind of humor. Of course, I would naturally hope to avoid that. But yeah, I don't think I've ever written a script that didn't have some laughs. Let's put it that way. And then it was interesting in Cannes because the only line of dialogue that got a big laugh, a big unrestrained laugh, was Viggo saying, "I'm not very good at the old sex."
I'm not very good at the old sex.
Talking to people, they said no, they wanted to laugh. They just weren't sure if they were allowed to, because you're wearing your tux and you're wearing your ball gown and whatever, your high heels. And are you supposed to laugh at this movie from the returning master of horror? I mean, I don't know. Anyway, so I think the laughs should hold. They should be there for everybody, really.
Years ago, on the VHS release of A History of Violence, which, by the way, was the last movie to be released on VHS in the golden age of video, my reel-to-reel co-host Jeff Pevere and I did a special with David Cronenberg about the film and his career. At one point, we talked about the long list of films that he said no to, the movies he turned down. They included Top Gun, Return of the Jedi, Beverly Hills Cop, and Flashdance. Jeff asked him what kind of film Flashdance would have been if he had directed it. It would have been a failure, he said. Since his 1969 feature film debut Stereo, a movie about several young volunteers who participate in a parapsychological experiment at the Institute for Erotic Inquiry, David Cronenberg has walked his own path. From the sci-fi horror of Scanners and the surreal drama of Naked Lunch to the eroticism of Crash and the romantic drama of M. Butterfly, he has created a singular body of work that continues this month with the release of his latest film, The Shrouds.
When they lowered my wife into the coffin, I had an intense urge to get into the box with her.
You never considered cremation?
How dark are you willing to go? Those are the shrouds.
You mean like burial shrouds?
Not exactly. It's basically a kind of camera in her grave.
Don't you find it hard to take?
It comforts me.
It's like she's floating in outer space.
The shrouds.
It's not meant for the living.
Maybe not meant for the dead either.
For the Cronenbergs, filmmaking is a family affair. Son Brandon Cronenberg says while growing up, he was a book nerd and considered a career as a writer, a painter, or a musician. He shifted his focus to film when he realized that film contained all the elements necessary to scratch his creative itch. Daughter Caitlin Cronenberg received a degree in fashion design before beginning her career as a photographer whose work has appeared in magazines and newspapers around the world, including the covers of W and Variety and the cover and booklet for Canadian rapper Drake's Views album, which became a viral sensation. In 2021, she shot The Death of David Cronenberg, a 1-minute film starring her famous father as he observes himself after death. I told Caitlin that film has haunting images that really stick with the viewer.
Sure, they sure do. If you've never seen your dad get into bed with a corpse of himself, like, have you even lived?
In 2024, she directed the feature Humane, starring Jay Baruchel and Emily Hampshire. More on that later. First, let's have a look at Brandon Cronenberg's 2008 film Antiviral. At the heart of Antiviral is the notion that in the near future, fans will become so rabid they'll actually pay to be infected by celebrity diseases to feel closer to their idols. Sounds strange, but consider the statue containing John Lennon's DNA, courtesy of a beetle molar bought at auction by artist Kristen Zuck, or the more than $40,000 paid for a lock of Justin Bieber's hair. In an in-studio interview, I asked Brandon Cronenberg about antiviral. What I really was struck by was the comment on celebrity culture. I mean, it's so interesting to me that you have these people who want George Clooney's flu. In the film, they're all Hannah Geist. They're all fictional celebrities. Tell me about where the idea came from.
I started writing it in 2004 when I started film school at Ryerson. And it began with disease rather than the culture of celebrity. I was suffering from a flu, and I was obsessing over the physicality of illness and how I had this thing physically in my body and in my cells that had come from someone else's body, and how there was a weird intimacy to that connection. And then after I got better, I was trying to think of a character who might be able to see disease in that way, and I was struck by the idea that a celebrity-obsessed fan might want that kind of intimacy, or might be more open to that perspective, and it developed into an interesting metaphor, I thought.
Yeah, it's interesting for me because when I was watching the film, initially I thought, well, this is the Kardashians. I mean, it's the last thing that they haven't sold. It seems to me that the idea, because the celebrities in the film are complicit in this. I mean, their germs are not being stolen from them; they're selling them to this clinic, and so. Was there, a larger component to it? I mean, did you sit down in front of the E! Channel one day and watch a marathon of the Kardashians and go, what, this is closer to the truth, or closer to actually being plausible than maybe I thought initially?
Well, I think I always thought it was kind of plausible, but yeah, I certainly spent a fair bit of time looking at television and magazines and trying to suss details. Actually, a friend of mine, while I was shooting, pointed me in the direction of this YouTube video that was Sarah Michelle Gellar on Jimmy Kimmel Live. And at one point she says, I don't want to sing or something because I have this cold and I don't want to get the audience sick. And then everyone started applauding like crazy. And so, I mean, it's so... And that was kind of a joke, but I'm sure at least one person in that audience would want Sarah Michelle Gellar's cold. So, I think it's certainly meant to be satirical and meant to be a cultural caricature. But I think it's not that far from what already exists.
Satire blends with horror to create some of antiviral's lasting images. There's a butcher shop that literally feeds the public's need to consume their favorite stars. The Sweeney Todd-esque butcher even has a celebrity cell garden where he grows celebrity cell steaks. Imagine a new and improved Soylent Green with 50% more celebrity. There are some grotesque images blended into these sequences, but the most horrifying is its plausibility, that this reflects our increasingly rabid celebrity culture, just tilted 180 degrees.
Fame. Glamour. Perfection. What if you could find it all at the tip of a needle? Here at the Lucas Clinic, we strive to bring you closer to celebrity than ever before. With samples drawn directly from the source, you can be connected in ways you never imagined.
Brandon Cronenberg's other films, Possessor, which blends assassins with mind control, and Infinity Pool, a nightmarish commentary on the privilege of wealth and the evil that men do, are available wherever you legally buy and download movies. Humane is the debut film from director Caitlin Cronenberg. Taking place over a single day just months after a global ecological collapse has forced world leaders to take extreme measures to reduce the Earth's population, Humane sees a recently retired newsman invite his grown children to dinner to announce his intentions to enlist in the nation's new euthanasia program. But, and there's a big but here, when the father's plan goes sideways, tensions flare and chaos erupts among his children. At the time of Humane's 2024 release, I asked Caitlin Cronenberg about the family values in her debut film. Partially a horror film, in a way, it's a thriller for sure, but it's really, more than anything, a social drama, a family drama that takes place by and large in one day. And I think that horror and thrillers are a great way to tell stories because they can be very specific and yet really universal at the same time. And I think Humane does that in its depiction of how families can fall apart under stress.
Absolutely. I think that the idea of a family drama set in a kind of an unnatural world situation is such an interesting way to sort of observe a family dynamic and understand what families are like, because of course we can relate to certain aspects of how these families relate to each other, even if we can't exactly relate to the outside pressures that are happening in the world of Humane. But that is really the thing that drew me to it, because it isn't about the global environmental collapse. You feel that that's there, that that's the setting, but really this is a family drama with siblings who are have had a complicated relationship growing up, and I find that really fascinating. And then it's bloody also.
Using dark humor to expose the selfishness and cruelty of human nature, Humane's social farce cuts like a knife. As the action escalates, dirty secrets are revealed and the soft underbelly of the family exposed as each member makes a case for survival. It's a dystopian August Osage County with hints of Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf and Step Brothers. Cronenberg keeps the action contained to one day, mostly in one house, with decisions that bring a sense of ticking clock urgency and claustrophobia to the proceedings.
Hi, I'm Bob.
It's them!
Oh, they're early.
You're not gonna like this, but we're here to collect 2 bodies.
I already told you Dawn left.
And that's unfortunate. But the rules are the same for everybody.
That was a clip from the movie Humane, directed by Caitlin Cronenberg. I'll leave you now with another clip from Caitlin, in which she talks about her filmmaking family, working on their sets as a unit photographer, and what it's like directing her own movies. You've spent a great deal of time on sets as a set photographer. Your father, of course, is David Cronenberg. Your brother is Brandon Cronenberg. I would imagine that you've been on their sets as well. Tell me what was different about it being your set on this particular film.
People bring you snacks when you're the director. So that's awesome. You also have to carry less gear when you're the director, and that part is also awesome. It's a lot of fun to be on my father and brother sets, but I'm there working. I'm a photographer for them, and I enjoy being able to be part of the things that they're building. I feel my eyes well up, and I feel full of pride when I see my family members excelling and doing the things that they love. I think that's true of anyone doing any job that they love. You feel pride and you feel excited because they're happy. That's what supportive family members do. So, when I'm on my own set, I have one focus, and my focus is to make the best film that I can possibly make. And when I'm on their sets, it's to support them in the projects that they're making. I will say that being a still photographer on set is very different than being a director in terms of the way that people enjoy having you around, to say it in a nice way. They're not necessarily the most beloved crew members. So being a director is a little bit different in that way. But, at the same time, I think it's important to experience different sets, different people, different directing styles, and in order to understand the way that it feels to be a crew member who's lower on the food chain, gives you a different perspective for sure.
That was Caitlin Cronenberg. You can find all the Cronenberg family movies I've talked about today wherever you legally buy and download films. I'm Richard Krause. Thanks for listening to Maple Syrup for Your Eyes. I'll be back soon with more suggestions. In the meantime, be sure to celebrate and support Canadian films.